Welcome back, Kimberly, to
Thanks for
another Soul Connection call.
Thank you for having me, Safrianna. Even
You're
though
so welcome.
it is like the world is like, no, we're gonna mess. Universe says, let me get in the middle of this.
Oh my gosh, yes. And this is not our first time coming together for a conversation and we know each other's energy and all of that. But yes, we've been wanting to have another conversation for like 3 months now or something,
Yeah.
but we just kept coming to no, the universe just hit me with this, or nope, it hit me with that. And so we were just kind of like honoring that in each other. And I love that I have these friendships now and meaningful, collaborative relationships where I can be honest about my energy levels and other people can be honest about theirs, and things get
Yeah.
rescheduled, and that's okay.
It is okay. Yeah.
So let's just do a little orientation. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself to our
Yeah.
audience today.
Sure. Thank you. I'm Kimberly Winters. I I'm a podcaster. I'm a public speaker. I'm a healer. And yeah, my podcast is called Did You Bring the Hummus? It's very vegan focused, but that doesn't mean spirituality doesn't come into it. So it's really nice when I get to mix those two things together. The spirituality is still so new for me, just in the last few years where I've really embraced it. It's always kind of been there, I think, hidden underneath this really angry atheist. Like super angry. Um,
I know a lot of people who have been down that path. So yes, it makes sense.
Yeah. So, now I just want to have conversations. That's my focus. It's just chat.
Honestly, same. I was just reflecting on that recently. Most people know at this point that I retired from being a one-on-one therapist about 2.5 months ago now. And since then, I've been really reflecting on what makes me feel really alive and joyous. And it's having these sorts of live conversations that can benefit any number of people, not just the person I'm having the conversation with and me, right? Because in the therapy room, we would have these earth-shattering conversations, and I'd be like, if only like 10 other people got to hear this, they would have these massive awakenings, and then it could have such a profound impact. So I love that we get to just be speakers and have
Mhm.
conversations and that bring, value to people. It's something that's really magical, I think. So
Yeah, I agree.
I'm Safrianna Lughna, the Queer Spirit Guide. That's all you need to know for now. Let's jump into our topic today, which is we titled this episode Starseed Awakening because you just shared the spiritual journey is newer for you.
Mhm.
How did you come to learn of the term starseed? Like, why was this suddenly like lit up for you where you're like, I'm ready to talk about this?
So in March of this year, I did my levels 1 and 2 angelic Reiki training and attunements. And when I met my angelic Reiki teacher, she said that ahead of our training, I like to just kind of pull a real baseline Akashic Records info.
Hmm.
And when we got there to the angelic Reiki, since most of the other students had already sat with her and done like a full Akashic Records reading, she pulled me to the side and she's like, let's just get some quick info over to you. And the first thing she told me is she was like, so your soul path started on Vega. And I was like, what does that mean? What is Vega? And so she explained that it's a planet or star in the constellation Lyra. And you feel free to correct me, whatever I say wrong, or because like I said, it's still so new. But we were talking, and then she's like, "Hey, so you're from Vega, and you're a vegan in this life, and it's spelled the same when you say I'm vegan. Like it's spelled the same. It's just
That's
pronounced differently." So then I was like, what is that about? And then she said, what you did after you were kind of done with your time in Vega is you moved over to Sirius, which I've then found out is actually really common, because people from Vega were like, hey, we've got all the info, we've got all the stuff, and we're going to go spread it out. And I was one of the people apparently that wound up, or one of the beings that wound up in Sirius. And when she was explaining this to me, I was like, okay, this is really interesting. And like I don't ever feel like who am I to think that this stuff isn't true? But at the same time, like in the back of my mind, I'm going, what are you
You're
talking? What
going,
is this? Yeah.
do I want to claim this for me?
Exactly.
Been there.
But then, it's kind of like, even if it turned out that none of it was true, the more I learn about the descriptions of those who have come from Vega, I'm like, oh, this is like, I get this. This explains so much of like choices I made. And I wasn't aware of any of these things. I
Mhm.
didn't, read this stuff and go, oh, that sounds like something I should do. So I'm going to make X, Y, and Z decisions. I look back at my life before I knew about any of this, and I see the patterns of where it has shown up and how it's influenced the way that I've chosen to be.
Mhm.
And yeah, as I was digging deeper, and then I had the full Akashic Records reading in July. And then that's when you and I first started talking about, hey, let's do a talk. And I was like, oh my God, I gotta like dig into this, because I wouldn't even know what to say about it back then.
Right.
And so yeah, so that's what's kind of got it on my mind now, is that it's just so cool, and I'm learning so much about myself. And I think whatever we can do to understand ourselves better,
Mhm.
why wouldn't we?
Yes. I mean, that's so much of my self exploration. I call myself a self development junkie. Like, I love to literally consume as much self development as I can. And I've learned, especially recently, that we need that time to integrate and slow down and like actually learn the lessons and get them installed before we move on to the next one. But there's so many systems of understanding that we can have out of ourselves. And the more that we get to know ourselves, the more we get curious about other people. It's this very interesting bi-directional, like the more we get to know ourselves, the more we open to what's out here. And it's just so profound if we aren't willing to even like look, when someone gives us information like telling us that we're a star seed and we have a past life somewhere, right? If we just flat out deny it right away, how does that serve us? Unless it's like
Mhm.
a big resounding no in your body where you're like, that is definitely not for me, right? The resistance is actually usually a good sign, like, there's something here that I need to investigate for myself. But we do ourselves a disservice if we don't get curious and actually discern, is this for me or not? I came into my own journey with the concept of Starseed. It was early 2021 now, I'm wanting to say. Time is so freaking weird. It was either 2021 or 2022 now, and I would literally have to go look at my journals because it was a whirlwind from there of rapid timeline jumping and cosmic self-awareness that I'd never had before. And I came into the star seed from a completely different angle than you did. So you got information about like, here's where your soul's lineage is potentially from, right? This
Mhm.
is where your soul has incarnated before, which can be really great information because just like ancestral human lives, right? Our soul's lineage plays a factor in how we're interfacing with the world,
Yeah.
right? So that can be really eye-opening information, especially if you get like, oh, I was from this particular planetary body or system, and this is the stuff that other souls remember from that system, right? Like
Mhm.
we've had a lot of cataclysmic events that have all over the universe that have caused us to come here to Earth. But my angle wasn't about my planet, it was about my energy. It was about my starseed role and why I was coming to Earth at this time. And so I
Okay.
came into a community that was more about energy blueprints as starseeds or as earth souls.
Hmm.
Energy blueprints that it was originally just like star seeds were in the community, but then earth souls started kind of finding it and being like, what about me? And we were like, oh, well, the energy thing does apply to them too. But this star seed mission, if we want to call it that, is to try and save Earth from having a really bad cataclysmic event like
Mhm.
so many other systems have.
Yeah.
Ugh.
I
No
know.
pressure.
Right.
So I know you, and it's like you're already on this Earth mission of like really trying to improve health and reduce animal cruelty and, save the environment and all of the things that being vegan have to do with, right? There's so
Mhm.
many layers of why we promote veganism in the world right now, because it
Yeah.
can save the world. It's something that can actually, like, if more people get on that, can have a big impact in so many ways.
Yeah.
So how is this for you, like getting this extra layer thrown on of, and by the way, you have a cosmic thing going on too?
Yeah. So at first it felt very like, whoa, oh boy, that's a lot. And I don't know if I'm up for it. And then I sat with that and I was like, "Oh, of course you're up for it. This is like your whole thing. Your entire life, you've known that there's something that you're here to do." And as a kid, like I didn't know what that was. Some kids are like, I'm going to grow up and be this. And my dream job changed every week. Like I had no idea. But
Yeah, I resonate with that.
yeah. But yeah, when I look at, like I was saying before, I look at these choices I've made in my life and I'm like, "Oh girl, you were doing this the whole time and you had no idea, but here you are." So it doesn't feel so big anymore.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
And it, it's also about like once you have this bigger realization, this more cosmic, multidimensional aspect to your identity, it does call in the need for a new level of support and a new community.
Mhm.
Because absolutely, if you walk into most rooms and you lead with, "Hi, I'm a starseed," anyone else? Like, you're gonna get blank stares, like, "What the heck are you talking about?" And that was something that in my journey of coming into this, and again, I was coming in more from the energy, so I didn't know where I was from. I
Mhm.
just knew that I was from somewhere else. I had this soul knowing. Um, I was introduced first to the mission, which was for me. I have two missions because I have two selves. It's a very complicated. I'm a complicated extra dimensional being, and I'm just learning to accept that. But I had actually two different energy missions. One is networking people, and that's really more of my human embodied
Mhm.
self, is networking the right people together and getting people the right supports and collectively shifting the timeline. And
Mm.
then the other purpose is the clarion, which is more of my extra dimensional self, which is bringing through the cosmic wisdom that just needs to be spoken. And so I was very much thrown right into the mission of it. And now I'm actually getting to know years, a year and a half, 2 years later, I can't keep track of time, where I'm from and what my soul lineage is from.
Okay.
And that is very controversial to some extent, because one of the fun things about Starseeds is we don't currently have proof, right? We can't get on a spaceship and fly to this other planet and see that it is there.
Right.
So we're all kind of coming in with, well, I have these soul memories, or, people, lots of people agreeing or remembering these things, but we don't have enough people openly talking about it to get into the finesse of what is necessarily true versus what is our own traumatic memories. So, for
Mm.
example, I'm actually from Lemuria, and most people think that that is somewhere that's here on Earth.
Mm.
And that's there. All the books about Lemuria say that it's here.
Yeah.
But my sense of reality is that it was a place, not here. And then there was a cataclysmic event and a bunch of souls fled here. So we have this ancestral memory of Lemuria was a place.
Mm.
It still is, but we left because it was so bad. And
Okay.
so if we can't have these talks, like, we're
Mhm.
not going to ever get to the bottom of this bigger cosmic story that is right. I mean, it's right in front of us, right?
Yeah.
Getting your Akashic records open and they're like, "Have you ever heard Lyra?" Like, "No." Well, now
Should
you're
I?
gonna remember. And
Yeah.
that's the thing. Did you have this experience as like you started to look into this? Because this was my experience, like, oh, I can't deny this. There's something to this. Like, what was that like for you when you had that initial, what is this?
Yeah, so it very much was like, okay, if I say this to anyone, like I'm in trouble because I sound like I'm saying things I shouldn't be saying.
Hmm.
And then, I had the background of being like, nothing exists, it's just what's here, and that's it. So then I had to kind of marry that and have people go, what is going on with you? Like, from the time I was a small child, I was like, God's not real. It's all nonsense. Come on, let's go play. Like, I was not into any of it. So when
Hmm.
I start coming out with like, starting with like energy and connecting to nature in like a different way, hearing and feeling the trees, and people are like,
Hmm.
oh boy, like this vegan thing must be really messing with her head. And
Yes, it's the veganism. It's,
of course.
yep.
but, so I had to wrestle with that too. Like, how do I marry this person that I used to identify so strongly with like all this stuff that not just am I reading about and did someone tell me about, but that I am starting to experience. Like, the more I connect with things like oracle cards and energy and listening to, calling in different entities and angels and things like that, and actually getting information. And I start to go, okay, well, even if
Hmm.
people think that I'm off, like, I know that these things are happening. And then, I'm reading about Vega and how people who are here now notice that, like, when you think about the five clairs, the way that we can interpret the world, like a lot of people know about clairvoyance. They've heard clairvoyance before,
Hmm.
but there's like clairaudience and clairsentience, and clairaudience, and then I blanking on the other two, but
Clairsentience,
yeah,
claircognizance. Yeah.
yeah. Oh, and Claire, the nose one. I can never. Oh,
Olisance,
something like that.
something.
Yeah. So my two strongest are clairaudience and the nose one. And sometimes when I'm doing Reiki, I'll actually smell things and then I'll tell the person and they're like, "Oh yeah, this means X to me," or whatever. So that's pretty cool. But the clairaudience thing is really common from people who have come from Vega. And it's like these little things, and there was a description about people from Vega, entities from Vega being blue,
Mm,
and blue is always a color that I felt not just drawn to. It wasn't just my favorite color. It's like a color that I feel almost like embodies me.
yeah,
Yeah.
I love that.
It's been a
Yeah.
real trip.
Yes, and no, I'm glad that we're having this conversation because again, like a lot of people are having these experiences, but they're not hearing about it from other people. So they have this sense of like, oh my gosh, I'm crazy. I'm crazy. I'm
Mhm.
schizophrenic. I'm hearing voices. I'm having, and I think that that's something that from my time of being, and I am still technically a medical professional. I still have my licensure. As somebody who has really gotten into the spiritual realm and had my own awakening, I think that there are a ton of people who have been pathologized, who are simply having intuitive experiences, experiences of otherworldly stuff
Mhm.
that are so invalidated and so beat down that it has become a pathology, like because of the trauma that they experienced. And
Yeah.
so people like us who kind of come into it later, or it's something that was kind of silenced early on maybe, or we just kind of let it drift and then we come back to it after self-development and self-awareness and that kind of stuff, we have this other perspective of it where we're like, wait a minute, like I now feel, am I supposed to feel crazy? But this feels real
Mhm.
and I'm a stable human being. So it's like we start to see these mixed messages. It like really starts to highlight that so much has been shut down
Yeah.
because it's woo, it's spiritual, it's empowering,
Can't have
and
that, especially
can't
as a
have that.
lady.
No.
Mm-mm.
Oh, yeah, well, we can get on that soapbox real quick, right? Like
Yeah.
when we think of and that absolutely plays into gender in our society and in our culture, because femininity, or lunar energy, I like to refer to it as sort of the cosmic entities. Lunar energy is our intuitive energy, and we all possess this no matter what's going on in our physical body, and what our body parts are. All of us have this energy, but that lunar energy has been destroyed, punished, smothered, burned at the
Mhm.
stake, all of these things. So there is a legacy behind us of those of us tapping into this intuitive energy, getting so shut down that why would we ever want to come forward with it?
Yeah.
So good on you, right? For choosing to come forward with it, because
Yeah.
it's huge. It's breaking free from a system of oppression.
Yeah. And you too.
Thank
Like,
you. It's just something that people don't realize how liberating it is to step into spiritual empowerment, and how
mhm.
scary it is
Oh
to
yeah.
bridge that gap. Like you had the more atheist, I know God isn't real, like what the heck, which is more of that, you knew there's something way bigger and more complex
Mm.
than what limited view of God you were being given, right?
Yeah.
Whereas for me, I totally believed in God because I could feel God, but the version I was being taught about, I was like, why does this God hate me for liking girls? Or why does this
Mhm.
God want me to go to hell if I never heard of him?
Right. Yep.
Like those things didn't add up, and so I started to question. But then that meant, when I started to come into the multidimensional and the spiritual, that I had to unhook from all of that religious trauma.
Mhm. Yeah. And I realized I kind of knew it my whole life, I think, but I had religious trauma too. I just didn't know that's what it was. So, my immediate family, not really religious. Both of my parents were raised though in Catholicism,
Hmm.
and they just didn't push it on us, and that was not taken well by one side of the family. And it ultimately resulted in a point where the family stopped speaking
Hmm.
to us. And there was a lot of judgment and just a lot of pain. We were treated differently. And it always came back to the religion piece. And there was even one year for Christmas, I was given my brother, or Easter maybe. We never got Easter gifts from like our parents once we were done with like, you know, baskets of candy. But one year we got catechisms. And like neither of us like we didn't even know what it was. I used it as a
Right.
coaster for the longest time in my bedroom because I was like, well, I mean, I'm not I guess I'll throw it away. But there was a book and I love books and I'm like, well, I'm not gonna throw a book away. Like, why would I do that? And and it was just when I look back, I see how damaging that approach by this person who is supposed you're supposed to feel loved by, and they just are just beating it into you that you're not good enough, your family's not good enough, and you're not doing what she wants you to do. And that's the end of it until you come around and start doing it right.
Mm.
Yeah. And I think that really helped with the atheist thing because the only experience I had was of the book religions. And
Wow.
I was
Yeah.
like, you know what? This ain't for me.
Yeah, especially because you clearly had such a profound connection to nature, and I think that when we are sensitive to nature as children, we can feel that there's something more. Like
Hmm.
we can feel that interconnected web of life, and the heartbeat of the earth, or of the animals and the bugs around us. Like that's not really addressed super well in the book religions. All of the, like, it's kind of glossed over, like, beautiful planet, God made the animals, yay, and now we're into like turmoil and strife and punishment and expectations and
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Uh, one of our viewers said it's funny to me that Catholics tend to be the quickest to jump into the woo bus once they actually look at it. And they said at least that seems to be the way of it from my experience being raised Catholic. I will say, as a professional, that and a professional spiritual practitioner, therapist, and somebody who's been running rituals since I was 18, that yes, the Catholics are definitely statistically much higher in the turnover rate into like paganism and earth-based religions. And I think it's because the ritual is just one step away from tuning it actually into nature, right? It's
Yeah.
like these rituals to connect to something, right? But then when we root it in the earth, it just really comes through more powerfully because we can feel it.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm curious about if you would weigh in on this, if this feels like a question you want to answer, your veganism and this newfound sort of starseed identity, how do
Mhm.
those two go together? Because I do think that they absolutely can have some overlap.
Yeah, so what I've learned recently really is just that there's the mission, like you were saying earlier, there's this mission to come here and make the world a better place. And for me, the veganism piece does that. And to me, it is the most meaningful and powerful thing that we can all do. We do it at least 3 times a day, every day, just in what we're eating. But then veganism, of course, encompasses everything else we do, every other choice we make, the types of clothes we wear, the products we buy, the entertainment we pay for is dictated by this idea that we don't want to exploit and harm other beings. Then I look at it from a spiritual perspective, and to think about other living beings that have an experience that maybe is not exactly the same as us, right? Their language is different, but there are people on this earth that speak languages I don't understand, languages I'll never learn. But we don't look at, I guess, well,
It depends who you're
there it
talking
is.
to, huh?
Ooh,
Ooh, there's the reality. That's
ooh,
where we
yeah.
go on
Mm-hmm.
in these conversations.
Okay, yeah. So for me, I don't see a person who doesn't speak the same language as me as any different than me. And I see that the same way when I look at other sentient beings on this planet who have just as much of a right to be here as I do. Now, as I was starting to say, and then the reality hit, right?
The
There are lots
uncomfortable mind blown.
there are lots of people on this planet who would look at someone who doesn't speak the same language they do and immediately decide that they are not worthy of the same things that they are. And that, I think, is kind of the same approach that people are taking towards animals on this earth as well. We've come to this idea that if something can serve us or someone can serve us, then they should. And we should have that. And that's absolutely not the case as far as I'm concerned. And I feel like it's really connected to this idea that I'm on a mission to help change the world. And it's so clearly been my path, like my whole life, having been connected to animals and the earth as a child. And then the very first time I was exposed to some kind of animal cruelty, I was like 10 years old. It was in a magazine. It was an ad from an animal rights organization about the way calves are raised for veal.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I've never eaten veal. But at the time, I didn't make the connection as a 10-year-old to all the other animals I was eating. And then all these other seeds get planted, and the connection just grows and grows. And I'm historically a person who I don't really stick with a lot of stuff. I move around a lot, which is also connected to these um, my other experiences before this life. I'm very much, ooh, what's that? I want to learn it.
Yeah.
I want to learn all the things about it, and I'm bored. On to the next thing.
Yep.
So everyone thought when I was like, I'm going vegetarian, that I was not going to stick with it. And I didn't know how to cook. I didn't know what to eat. I didn't like vegetables. So nobody bought that Kimberly was really making this choice. But there was something so deep within me that was like, nope, this is it. And then, like, I went vegan eventually. Wish I'd done it sooner, but I'm here now. And I feel like this whole path has just been me working towards finding a way to be that change and be on that mission. And then in the last like couple of years, I've really started to think about using my voice to do that. And
Yeah.
that's really ramped up, honestly, since I started looking into these things, looking into my Akashic records, learning more about the history of me and really what my whole purpose is.
Yeah. And I am very much so this is me as a natural number 9, it's me as a Gemini, it's me as just me as all the extra dimensional being that I am. Like I'm a vegetarian, I've been vegan, I've been carnivore, I've been all the things at different times. And for me, when it comes down to this, it is how can we have the biggest amount of impact and the least amount of cruelty?
Mhm.
And I love people like you who are so rooted in like, I am holding the torch for all the future vegans that can, like, this is the lifestyle for them. Because I'm never going to argue with someone that says they need meat to be healthy. Like, if that's what your body needs and that's what you genuinely feel at a soul level, cool. Let's work on your impact then. How are you going to source this in a way that doesn't cause suffering in other humans and in the animals? Like,
Mhm.
what's the most humane way that you can source this? And indigenous cultures all over have beautiful practices where they honor the spirit and the being of the animal and they use the full animal. And to me, that's way more in balance than what a lot of, and myself included, I was that person when I was a public school teacher. I would roll out of the middle school and go down to McDonald's and get myself a double cheeseburger to comfort myself. And
Mhm.
I would feel energetically awful and the cycle would continue, and it didn't feel good. And it was not for survival. It was not because my body needs meat to survive, because it doesn't. I've been a very staunch vegetarian now, like very, for I think 3 years now.
Mhm.
When I had my next layer of spiritual awakening, I went back to vegetarian, where if I source animal products, I basically know the animal they came from, or like can vouch for their circumstances to some extent. Like, that's my spiritual relationship with it now. And I know so many people that are still going through those waves of
Mhm.
opening to what is right energetically for them. And so again, I love that you teach people how to do it. You teach people how to come into a more just ethical relationship with how they're consuming in the world. And that's such an important mission. Even if veganism is not for everyone, the mission that you have of why you do it and what the impact you have, and bringing that impact awareness to other people is so important. So like, thank you for holding this torch.
Thank you.
And
I
I
do want to just I want to say one thing about that,
yeah,
the spiritual practice and the honoring of animals. I think it's really important that we just notice when we're doing that to make ourselves feel better,
yeah,
because I have seen and heard countless comments about, well, I thank this animal for their sacrifice. And we've got
mm,
to be important, and we've got to be mindful of our language, because no animal is sacrificing themselves for you. You
right,
have chosen to take their life or pay someone to take their life.
yep,
And so if we're trying to make ourselves feel better, like this animal sacrificed themselves for me, like we need to sit with that, because that
that's a good,
100% is not the case.
yes, yeah. And so to really differentiate, are you like a person who's literally a part of an ecosystem, right?
Right.
As in an indigenous tribe? Because guess what, like, a lot of the colonizers pretty much destroyed all the predatory animals that did their ecosystem thing, right?
Mhm.
Are you a part of an ecosystem, or are you making an excuse? And
Yeah.
that is like, that's something, self-awareness is so hard in when we get into these sorts of things, because we want our creature comforts and we want it to
Yeah.
be easy. And I
Mhm.
this doesn't just have to do with food, it has to do with all of the products we consume. And I'm super into sustainability, and again, reducing our impact or
Mhm.
having a positive impact versus a negative impact. And there's so many things that we tell ourselves stories about that my wife sent me a like a TikTok or a reel the other day of this comedian singing about how they won't use styrofoam because it's bad for the environment unless it's what their leftovers come in. And we do this stuff all the time. We're like, I'll take a stand on this unless
Mhm.
it's happening, in which case I won't take a stand on it and I'll just go along with it. And to be
Yeah.
called into a higher level of self accountability with that is not something we want to always do because we would sure
Yeah.
like comfort.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. And, there's no denying that. Anytime we're trying to make things better in any capacity, we're going to make it like we're going to feel like I don't know, when we're surrounded by people who aren't making the changes to make things better, it can be really hard. And so it's important that we're kind to ourselves, but not use that as an excuse to take from others.
Right. Yeah. And I think so going back to the Starseed piece, so much of the Starseed mission here really is about reestablishing a baseline for how we treat each other
Mhm.
and seeing all of us in the interconnected web. And that includes all beings, not
Yep.
just human beings, but all beings.
Mhm.
And how do we, because there's always going to be a life and death cycle. That's a
Yeah.
part of having a physical body. And so I very recently have started saying there's already enough pain in life with weather, death, health, health and death stuff, and just natural disasters. We don't need to hurt each other.
Yeah.
There's already enough of that happening. And animals, for the most part, can take care of themselves and do
They
their
can.
thing when they're in balance with the
Yep.
environment and we're in balance with the environment. So, how do we get more in balance with this beautiful environment that we have been provided because we're kind of destroying it
Oh
as a
yeah.
species right now?
Mm. That's a big question, right?
So one thing we can do is reduce our impact. If we do eat meat, we can reduce the amount that we're eating, right? That is a big thing
Mhm.
we can do to have an impact. So I know a lot of carnivores getting on the bandwagon of like meatless Mondays. That is a great start. Like
Yeah.
reducing how much takeout we're buying. I literally, my fast food place of choice now is Taco Bell because they have vegetarian options and their wrappers are paper. They
Yeah.
literally can be crumpled up and thrown away instead of getting something that's in plastic or
Mhm.
because, yes, we're going to do things. We're going to eat on the go. We're going to do all
Yeah.
kinds of things that how can we reduce our impact?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that's it's a big question, but those are two
It's
big things we can do.
right. Yes. When we think about things like fast fashion, like we
Ooh.
don't need new clothing, every season. We can
Thrift
be,
find, thrift find.
yeah, we can be fashionable
And
without,
these
ooh,
were to support human trafficking victims. I love getting like if I do buy something new, I like to know that it's supporting a good cause, like
yeah.
something that is handmade with love and attention, like
I
that
love that.
human
Yeah.
interaction.
Yeah. So, with when we think about buying things like clothes, like we have to wear clothes. So it's a necessity. I know, poor us. But
For us.
but if it's a matter between, you know, having less clothing, so less choices in our closet because we're spending a little bit more so that the clothing lasts longer than having to buy something new every 6 months because there's holes in it, it's falling apart because you only wanted to spend $10 on a t-shirt. And I'm speaking to people where this is a choice for them. So
Hmm.
there's a whole other conversation we could have about people where they're in a position where they don't have as many choices as a
Yep.
lot of us do. But from that perspective of where we're able to make choices of where our money goes and how we set up the life around us, it's I love this idea of thinking about the impact that you're having and
Hmm.
not just on your own life, but where did this product come from? What is it made of? Who was involved in the process? are people being hurt? Are
Yeah.
animals being hurt? And where can we shift our money to show the world, like, hey, this is a better way. We're not taking down trees. We're not, taking out people's homes. It's a lot at first, but
Yeah.
as it becomes a habit, then it's just what you do. And
And that's I feel like back in the early 2000s, mid 2000, when influencers were becoming a thing,
mm,
there was this really, now looking back, I see this sort of toxic movement that happened in kind of two ways. One, a lot of the influencers were selling crap products that, were not good for the environment, which kind of gave them a bad rap, right? But then two was the people who were coming in, as a lot of influencers were disempowered people who were trying to, make money or get back power in some way so that they could have choice in their life. So I appreciate you speaking to the fact that not everyone has the choice to purchase more ethical products, because if they've been limited, their income's
mhm,
been limited, or they're treated differently because they have disabilities and whatnot, like, yeah, that's going to not be a great, or they're not going to be able to make those choices. um but really, the sorry, a comment came in and my ADHD brain went, where was I going? That's what happens when I watch the comment feed at the same time. I'm going to try and rewind this here. The the influencers, we want to influence people to buy better products, but because so many influencers were women and people of color and queer people and like people with marginalized identities, I think the influencer movement got shut down. Like, it
mm,
got, no, influencers are a bad thing. Like, don't pay attention to them. But people like you and I, who are actually doing the work of looking, where does this company source their stuff? Because you're absolutely right. That takes so much work.
mhm,
Because I can't tell you, I'm like, all right, this is a really cute blouse. What is it made of? Where did it come from? Is there a sweatshop associated with this? Like, and I'm
mhm.
going the layers deep to find that out. So there are influencers, if we want to call them that, if we want to use that term, right? Reclaim the term, that
Yeah.
are already doing this work,
Mhm.
that you can go look up and see brands and products. Like there's a author who wrote a book called Give a Fuck.
Oh, nice.
And she wrote it's called The Little Black Book. Ashley Piper. She has a little black book online where she has listed out, if you're looking for sustainable brands. She's already done the
Mm,
research. Like, there
nice.
are resources that people can find out there if you're like, okay, I'm ready. And I'm going to tackle this area of my life first, my
Mhm,
wardrobe. I'm going to start making a more sustainable wardrobe. There are resources you can get out there to just help you do that. I'm going to start more eating plant-based, and I'm going to try and go vegan over time. Kimberly's got you. You've got all
I
those
do.
resources. Like, these
Yeah.
things exist so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel from the ground up.
Yep. Yeah. It's a lot easier now to make change in
Yeah.
your own life because there is so much support out there, and
Yeah.
we don't even have to leave the house. We just need to type a few keywords into Google or Instagram or whatever, and it pulls up what we need.
Yes. And I just posted the link to the little black book because I
Awesome.
have it. And yeah, like, use resources. Resources exist out there for people to make these changes, but we don't always have access, right? Access gets limited because of power and control dynamics that we could
Mhm.
talk about for hours.
Oh, yeah.
Not going to go there. Already glad that I found my ADHD train of thought on the influencer thread. We don't need to derail it again, but use the resources that are out there. There are people like us who want the world to be a better place and want to help other people figure out what's theirs to do. Like,
Yeah.
the vegan thing is yours to do, Kimberly. Like,
Oh,
that
yeah.
has been your heart and soul call forever. My thing to do is be the queer spirit guide and
Mhm.
teach people that everyone's a little bit queer and we're all
Yeah.
different. Like, really leaning into what's ours to do. And we really do that in relationship
Mhm.
by bouncing ideas off of one another and just hearing from one another, what's yours to do, what's mine to do.
Yep.
Can't figure
Yeah.
that out if I don't talk to other people.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's important to hone in on that one piece, that what's mine to do, because we can't do everything. And as a vegan, I hear a lot, well, what about the children? What about the homeless? What about this? What about that? And I'm like, right, there are other people that are doing that. So this is my thing, and maybe that's your thing.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, really, when people ask me that question, I want to ask them, what is your thing? Because usually, if someone's saying that to me, they don't have a thing.
They don't have a thing, and they think that the thing is taking on all the things. It's sort of
Right.
like, yeah, we can't all do anything, like,
Nope.
on our own, first of all, let alone everything on our own, right?
Hmm.
So it would be, we can't, as an individual, we cannot be responsible for impacting the kids, the homeless, the people of
Right.
color, the indigenous populations, the forests, the this, that we have to pick, like, here is where I'm going to serve, and I'm going to serve with my whole heart and soul, so that other people are inspired to serve with their whole heart and soul.
Yeah.
That's the ripple effect.
Hmm. It
So
works.
it does. Thank you so much for this
Thank
conversation.
you.
I know we could get on a soapbox about a lot of things for a long time, and it would probably be very educational, and we'd probably have people mentally burning us at the stake when we were done, and I'm here for that, but
Yeah.
not for the mentally they can do that in their mind's eye,
Right.
but no thank you over here. But yes, it's so good to just connect with someone who is on a similar journey and to just have these open dialogues. I really truly
Hmm.
appreciate it, so thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for doing this.
Absolutely. I'm here anytime. We can have a talk every 6 months when you have each
Perfect.
spiritual awakening layer, and
Yes.
just keep going.
I can't wait to see where the Starseed stuff takes me.
Oh my,
So,
and I'm
oh,
sure
it's
I'm
gonna be
gonna
so good.
have, once we, close out of the stream, I'm gonna be like, now I have all these resources I want to share. So yeah, that's what's gonna
Yep.
happen. So until next time, my friends, I'm Safrianna Luna. This is Kimberly Winters. Thank you very much.